Hello, dear friends. We are sincerely happy to greet you again, and today we are going to talk with the esteemed Igor Mikhailovich Danilov,
Greetings.
Sarah,
Greetings.
and Gabriel.
Hello.
Today we would like to discuss with you the topic of how to build a happy relationship, a relationship where both partners would experience much more pleasure and joy and would be much happier together than separately. Sort of a perfect picture when two self-sufficient, happy people meet and make each other even happier. For many people, this scenario will seem to be a fairy tale. But as a matter of fact, there are a lot of couples for whom this scenario is an absolute reality. And the question certainly arises, why do some couples succeed in building such harmonious, happy relationships, while others don't? Because initially, both the former and the latter strive to build the best relationship of their lives, where they would be comfortable with their partner, so that happiness would be great. So we would like to look at this issue not so much from the perspective of psychology, but rather from the perspective of the work of consciousness, the spiritual work on oneself.
That's a good question. But first we should approach this question a little bit broader, so to say. What does a happy couple mean? And from which standpoint should we look at it all? Isn't this true, friends? Right?
Right.
Let's just go back a little bit. In the past, a woman was standing on a shore, according to the classics, friends, and waiting for a prince who would come on a beautiful ship
With scarlet sails
with scarlet sails, yes, and would be sitting on a white horse and so forth.
on a ship.
Nowadays, at the very least, a woman is waiting, or rather a girl is waiting, for some Arab to come in a white Lamborghini, right? Isn't that true?
Right, times change and tastes change.
And there are thoughts in her head that everything will get better. But what does she really want? A marriage? A happy family life? Or, pardon me, just a creative society? I mean, when all domestic issues are resolved, when she lives in prosperity, peace and quiet. Isn't that so?
An unexpected approach.
An unexpected one, yes.
But that's the way it is.
From this very point, we should start figuring this out. What everyone wants, right?
Right, what the goals are.
What goals we pursue. And if we proceed from these, so to say, prospects, then everything falls into place. Some people just want to have a comfortable life, to solve their everyday problems. Let's say financial ones and many others. While other people simply unite for love. Again, what does love mean? Here we touch upon a whole layer and a very serious one. What is love in a commonplace understanding of, let's say, our life?
Well, I think there is physical love and there is love for the spiritual world.
No. Love for the spiritual world is a separate subject, whereas now we're talking about, well, young people meet, or not young people, never mind, a man and a woman meet, and they need to become a harmonious couple. And we proceed from the point that they have met for love. Here's a question, what does it mean for love? What is love? How to understand it? What is for profit, for convenience? We understand that, right?
Dominant, domination, or not?
Hormones.
Hormones, yes.
Initially, at the beginning, I
Hormones.
guess. Pleasure.
Just look, everyone comes to hormones and pleasure. But let's be frank, all our hormones will calm down very quickly. A year will pass, or 2 years if someone is lucky. And then it all gets boring and becomes routine.
How to prolong the state of satisfaction in life?
Well, first we should figure out what a happy couple is. What a harmonious couple means, okay? Is it when people match each other perfectly? And it is comfortable and convenient for them? Well, there is no such a thing. Someone...
They say two halves meet, complement each other, and merge. Can a person be a half?
No, he cannot. And if we proceed, let's say from the depth of this question, a person is self-sufficient, and he is always alone. If we consider it honestly and speak honestly, and we should speak honestly, right?
Yes.
To really get to the bottom of it, then any person is always alone. And first and foremost, he thinks about himself. No matter how much he respects or loves the other person, whatever hormonal attachments he has or something else, whatever values he has, he is alone anyway. People say two halves of the soul, don't they? There is no such a thing. It's all glorified by poets, it's all imposed on us. How do all fairy tales end? People have married, and a fairy tale ends. The reality sets in. And in that reality, there are a lot of trifles. Socks are standing in the middle of the room, right? She says, why are they standing in the middle of your room? He hasn't washed them for a long time, they've turned into boots. There are scattered things, or something else. Either she makes noise or he snores or something else. I mean, we have a lot of complaints against each other. All of us, literally all of us, are more unlike each other than we are alike. And the worst thing is, when people who are alike come together, they don't exist or live together for a long time, do they? Their life together is very short. Because as people say, when people have the same interests, when they simply complement each other, what does it mean they simply complement each other? It means that someone caves into someone. But when one person adjusts to another one and is forced to cave in, it means that after a while, the former will start looking for opportunities to dominate the latter. And we have the unity and struggle of opposites lasting all their lives for many people. Isn't that so? You know, there is the following saying, people say, you've lived your whole life together, you've lived to an old age. Tell us the secret of your happiness. A woman says, well, you see, he has ruined my entire youth. Now, I don't want to divorce him because I'm going to ruin his old age after all. Well, that happens very often, doesn't it? Until people get used to each other, until they settle down. And already cannot live without each other. Why? Because everything is neatly divided. One does the dishes, the other one cooks, one takes out the trash, the other one does something else. In other words, there is an assignment of responsibilities. It is comfortable and convenient, but it's all superficial. Yet, what is going on in people's heads, within them? Are they happy? Do they feel comfortable or not? A simple question. You see, well, if we approach it from this perspective and examine family relationships, the issue is pretty serious. When can people be happy? Yet, what is happiness? Let's figure this out. In your opinion, what is happiness?
I think happiness means inner freedom.
Great.
Right. Happiness is freedom.
Yes.
It is independence. It's an opportunity to do what you want.
Yes.
It is really true freedom, right? And opportunities. Opportunities to satisfy your desires, right?
Right.
Is it possible in family life?
Yes.
It is possible if the two partners are mindful, if they have a common goal, and in that goal there is both a work on themselves and spiritual development.
Okay, a husband wants to go fishing, whereas a wife wants to go to the theater. Who hasn't faced this?
One goes fishing, the other one goes to the theater.
This is the idea.
Yes.
But what happens in life and in reality? They go to the theater.
We are a single whole, we should go somewhere together and act in the same way.
This is what the woman says, you see? The woman says, we are a single whole. If I want to go to the theater, then forget about fishing. And this is a happy family life for the woman. Why? Because the husband is obedient, tame, and controllable. Moreover, he should do everything the woman wants. If he doesn't do what the woman wants him to do, he is simply stupid. Why? Because he will do what the woman wants him to do anyway. Only he will worry and ruin his nerves, right? If a woman wants to go to the theater, smarter men say, okay, let it be theater, all right. He sits in the theater watching a performance.
Visualizes fishing.
Cheers, yet he dreams about fishing, you see? Is this happiness or not? Well, many would say, of course. You're sitting in the theater next to the woman you love. Otherwise you would be feeding mosquitoes somewhere out there, the fish wouldn't bite, and so on. Well,
there is at least a guarantee of a peaceful future.
that's right, a guarantee of a peaceful future, because you won't be nagged when you come home, right? Otherwise you go fishing, come home, but at home you have an angry wife, and that's it, and she immediately ruins all the fun of fishing, right? Even if you caught a trophy fish, you come home but you see the sour face of your wife. And you don't want to go home, do you? And you cannot go to your female neighbor either, it will be even worse. Is that happiness? Is that harmony? Moreover, do we really understand each other? Because it is first and foremost about understanding each other and interests as well as supporting each other, right? Isn't that so? While our entire family life is based on various secrets, on secret action. Well, I don't dig deep. If we put it mildly, almost everyone, even making, how to put it in a civilized way, well,
The way it is
the way it is, yes, okay, I'll put it the way it is, excuse me.
during intimacy.
Yes, during intimacy and so on. He dreams about someone, about an actress, about the past, about something else. She similarly dreams about a prince in a white Lamborghini who has arrived and who has completely different features. At the same time, they are together.
People wrote such stories to us and voiced that, yes, such things happen. Yet, what happens from the perspective of the work of consciousness at this moment?
I'll tell you the following. Such stories happen to almost 100% of couples. However, we lie to each other. We say that this doesn't exist and so on. And this secret of ours, which remains ours for ourselves. Again, during intimacy, what do we do that for? In order to satisfy our own and our partner's physiological needs, right? Right, satisfaction of those needs is actually more of a brain activity, right? In other words, physical contact is secondary in this case. Why? I'll explain. Many people will say, how come? Well, let me explain, friends. Consciousness plays a much bigger role here. Why? During sleep, people often experience satisfaction, let's say, and it is much better than physical satisfaction. The question is why? Who predominates? Physics or consciousness? The entire physics boils down to creating certain conditions for a certain hormonal system to start working. But consciousness is behind it all. Hence we have pictures and desires. Hence willy-nilly, even being next to her beloved husband, a woman gets her eyes on a young and handsome man, and a brain process is triggered in her. She already compares how she would look next to that man. A man does the same thing looking at other women. He already compares, contrasts, and so on. Everything else is a wordplay. When people say, no, I would never do that, there is only you and so forth. That's physiology. That's the work of consciousness. And no one will get away from that anywhere. Are we talking about this openly? No. But even to think that at the moment of intimacy with your other half, you would voice that you have something in your head at this time, or that you recall, or you imagine something for your physiology to work properly, and for you to achieve a result. Well, it's impossible even to imagine that, isn't it? You know, it's like in a joke. A husband comes to work with a black eye, and colleagues ask him, what's wrong? Well, he says, I had sex with my wife yesterday. A colleague asks him, so what? No, everything is fine, says the man. She had maximum pleasure. Then why do you have that bruise? I told her, Natasha, you're great. The colleague says, so what? Did she hit you for this? Well, the husband says, it's just that her name is Helen. You see? And these jokes originate from life.
From life.
Why? There is no frankness and there is no truth. If you have at least any secret, at least anything secret and personal of your own, it is Satan's tool that will manipulate you, my friend. And no one will get away from that anywhere. You see, so we have figured it out merely a little.
Yes, sort of a gap arises between the two precisely this way.
100%.
In that secret action.
Of course. And there immediately begins what? Let's look at married couples. It is unity and struggle of the opposites, or domination for being the alpha. Isn't that so? Someone tries to rule over someone. In the beginning, let's say, if really normal people with sufficient intelligence get together, they somehow adapt. And this very process of adaptation is what distinguishes people who are endowed with intelligence and those who are not. If people lack intelligence
Conflicts.
in order to adapt, then fights and quarrels begin, and that's it. A marriage quickly collapses. Let's say, if it is profitable and convenient for both of them, well, I'm approaching it from such a mercantile, commonplace, everyday point. It is convenient, everything suits them. Hence, what do they need to adapt? But where is the word about love in this case? The love that has to be there when we cannot breathe without each other. Yes, we cannot breathe without each other, but for the first 6 months at most. As long as oxytocin is produced, such a hormonal one. Afterwards, if children appear, a woman usually develops oxytocin for the baby she takes care of. Her husband is secondary, and so it goes, doesn't it? That's true.
Attention doesn't flow anywhere else anymore.
Of course. And then there is already responsibility, and then there is nowhere to go, and there is forced coexistence until complete adaptation takes place. Right?
There is another question, Igor Mikhailovich. When two partners are mindful, when they work on themselves, when they have a common goal, let's say, to follow the spiritual path.
Well, you touch upon an ideal. I agree.
Yes, let's touch upon this. They set themselves a goal, for example, to gain spiritual salvation. They work on themselves, each of them, and they are basically ready to help each other to grow spiritually as well. What kind of relationship should there be in such a family?
Let's ask Gabriel and Sarah, what kind of relationship should there be in such a case?
This is very complicated because consciousness is very aggressive.
Exactly.
In various situations, I observe, I'm speaking about myself, I observe that consciousness is very aggressive when, for instance, Sarah doesn't do what my consciousness wants. I understand that it's not me, it's my consciousness. For example, this observation, I think, is very interesting and very good for me because I know that I should not react in this case because when I react, it's not me. And when I react, a conflict will arise.
It's a loss, yes.
Yes, it's a loss, exactly.
Yes, cool.
If we simplify it and just cast aside everything mundane, our entire psychology and everything else, and look at things reasonably, a human being is very complex by his structure. There is personality, it is who we are. Yes, there is the soul. It is that carrier which gives us life, and the one with which we should ultimately merge is the only gate through which we can enter the spiritual world. There is no other gate anywhere for us as personalities. But we also have such a notion as consciousness, which is both primary consciousness, or the so-called animal one, and secondary consciousness. It may be a highly intellectual entity, so to say, or it may be underdeveloped, and everything depends on us, how we brought it up, what information we gave to it, and how much we succumbed to the interest of that consciousness, right? Again, what is consciousness? Does it live in the neurons of our brain? Well, in theory, we are told that everything is in the head, right? But in fact, no one has ever found anything in the head, only a reflection of reactions of the activity of our consciousness. And that's where it becomes interesting. So what is consciousness? Consciousness is a field structure. Now everyone is already coming to this understanding, both neurophysiologists and everyone who studied the brain and what consciousness is, who studied it seriously. And it's clear that consciousness is outside of our body, although they even used to look for it in the neurons located in the abdomen. People say, why do we have several consciousnesses present in a person himself? Why? Because any observation of yourself leads to a point when you notice that you have a few selves. There is something that presents itself as being you, then something else presents itself as being you, so depending on whom you have connected with, that's what you are. But when you detach yourself from that and step back to the position of an observer, you begin to see the picture in a completely different way. In the past, in religions, this was called demons. It's very convenient, meaning there is a human as personality, right? However, there is also consciousness. Again, consciousness is a representative of the material world. It's like a reflection during the formation of personality, I mean secondary consciousness, whereas primary consciousness actually emerges together with our body. This primary consciousness is capable of developing until 5 to 6 years old at the most, meaning as the one of an ordinary primate, as the one a monkey has, nothing more. However, it is very, let's say, selfish and envious, and it causes a lot of trouble for us. Why? Because it is this consciousness that seeks to dominate. It seeks to always have things the way it wants, so to say, and it is easily manipulated by secondary consciousness. So it turns out that no matter how you twist it, we have a big demon, a smaller demon, and us as a human. Whatever we call it, for example, the first self, the second self, in terms of psychology, psychiatry, and the like. But in every person, the structure is identical. Therefore, when two consciousnesses clash, let's say, these are two demons, and there begins a game, my friends. Each demon seeks to take power over the other. As long as we live being controlled by a demon, we will never have order. Yes, demons can come to an agreement, they can remain silent somewhere, but that's if they are interested in it. If we as personalities feed them sufficiently, then you get a more or less tolerant married couple, so to say. As soon as, let's say, two egoists meet, they split up. Why? There are two demons and no one concedes to anyone. One should understand that in the world of animals and in the world of shadows, hierarchy is the main thing. Look at any married couple. People have lived for 50 or 70 years, it doesn't matter. They seem to have lived a very happy life. They have walked their whole life holding hands, going fishing and to the theater together. They had everything wonderful, they have raised children, and until their last breath, as the saying goes, they stick together, they are joined at the hip, simply everyone's dream. Yet, if you look inside at how they lived, they have suffered and agonized all their lives, being next to each other. Why? Because there was no understanding, because their demons came to an agreement. But at the same time, every animal remains an animal, while consciousness is an animal. It always seeks to dominate. So there were those petty squabbles, misunderstandings, resentments, and all the rest, right? How can a perfect married couple have resentments towards each other? There cannot be any. Simply cannot be. Why? Because who causes squabbles? It is consciousness who does. No one else.
It wants to divide.
That's for sure. Can we really be frank with each other in normal conditions common for all people? No, we cannot. Why? Because consciousness, especially if we are in the same room for a long time and interact with each other, with our second half, so to speak, during the day it repeatedly throws to us an occasion to quarrel with each other. It throws in, for example, you went the wrong way, you did the wrong thing, you rattle with a spoon, you slurp when you drink, and a lot of, let's say, complaints. Like Gabriel said, I want her to do it this way, consciousness wants. He said it right, not I, but consciousness wants. But I understand that it's consciousness that wants it, and that's it. The conflict is over.
It's over.
Why? He understands that and doesn't allow it to develop. However, when people do not know how a human is arranged and how it all functions, when a thought comes into his head that she is doing something wrong, once, twice, thrice, then this starts boiling over and he speaks it all out. It's good if there is understanding on that side, but what if there is pridefulness? Then it's a case of diamond cut a diamond, right? There are constant squabbles and fights. Seemingly they cannot live without each other, but at the same time their life turns into hell. So who lives instead of them? Precisely demons live instead of them. Do they live as human beings? As personalities at this time? No, they don't. They are in slavery of two demons. Each of the partners. That's the point. If there is no truth, while the truth can only be there when a married couple goes along the spiritual path together, and when there is a real catharsis, a real, not an artificial one, not for the purpose of manipulation, but indeed for the purpose of discovering how consciousness works, what the demon wants and how to counteract it. Right? That's when everything falls into place.
No, this is interesting, Ingrid Mikhailovich. It turns out that when relationships between people are built, let's say from the position of consciousness, there is always a hierarchy, and consciousness, which is negative inside every person as it is, always seeks, like a GPS navigator, to separate two people. Only this truth, as catharsis, helps to expose and remove this manipulation, always.
What actually happens at the moment of exposing it? Here's a simple example. This action stops functioning. In other words, if the demon hasn't achieved a result, he can try this tool a few more times, but if every time this tool doesn't work, he discards it. Meanwhile, his toolkit isn't that big in fact. Yes, he will cheat, he'll look for a tool, but if we don't let him, what does it mean we don't let him? We don't finance this action. A simple example. Your wife is not doing what you want her to do. Okay? Meanwhile, you realize that you don't really care what she's doing. But consciousness begins to rant. She's not doing it the way I want.
To escalate.
You as personality couldn't care less. But consciousness imposes out of pridefulness. If you listen to it once, it means that the second time you will start talking about that and making reproaches. You come up against the same stubborn consciousness, against pridefulness. So what will you get in return?
Resistance.
There will be a lot of insults and immediate accusations towards you. As soon as accusations shower on you, you begin to do what? To defend yourself. You say, how dare you accuse me when you yourself are like that? Is this married couple happy? A simple question. People will say, it's an ordinary couple, after all, everyone lives like that. Do they live? Or do they exist? While their demons live. That's the point. Isn't that so?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Many people underestimate the truth.
A simple example. How many times a day, if you spend a day together, so how many times a day does your consciousness throw you thoughts to find fault with each other?
A great many, a great many. One time, thoughts come from the right side. The other time, they come from the left side. It's very interesting to observe when you know, when it's not you, it's not you. Consciousness is very, very aggressive in different situations. Right, Sarah?
Yes.
Right?
And it's good that you know that thoughts are thrown in and conflicts arise solely from consciousness.
Yes.
At the time when you inside remain calm and indifferent to this situation. So this very phenomenon is what actually causes masses of divorces. Why? There is a lack of understanding.
Yes.
However, very often, even when people embark on the spiritual path, they follow the path as a married couple. Also, a game from demons starts. When demons begin to say, you will enter heaven together holding hands, and so on.
Yes, exactly.
And they start performing practices together and so on, searching for something together until they get sick of each other and split up based on this spiritual ground of theirs. Well, isn't that so?
It is.
On the spiritual path, manipulation by a demon is also huge. Why? He starts telling people something like, you are two halves of one soul, and you will enter heaven together. In actual fact, every person is very well aware and knows that he is individual. Everyone goes along their own road. It doesn't matter whether you are walking with your other half or with a group of people. Everyone is walking on their own. And it's an individual path. But it is more fun to walk together. And that's the point.
To study the work of consciousness.
Right.
Of course. Without studying the work of consciousness, without studying the tricks of a demon. And what does it mean to study the work of consciousness? That's exactly to study how a demon manipulates you. This is what all saints, real saints, described at all times, how they fought against demons and so on, but later on all this was altered. And many fantasizers, who do not even understand what they are talking about, begin to say that they virtually fight some demons for real, who come to them and scorch them with fire and so on. You know, such religious fantasies for fools, there is no other way to put it, right? While in fact, those saints who reached that faced their own Armageddon in their heads. Although, to be honest, not even in their heads, but beyond them.
If we talk about working on oneself, about the catharsis that happens within a married couple when both partners follow the spiritual path, what should actually be discussed?
And this
Some
is
mundane things or what? What exactly should be voiced?
This is actually the most important aspect in order for a family to be truly complete and harmonious. The first thing you need to understand is that each of you is an individual, that you strive for spiritual development and that you are satisfied with each other. And in order to eliminate any manipulation, let's say by consciousness, and to learn how it works, the first thing you should understand, especially at the stage of catharsis, is that it is precisely the demon and not you as personality that throws in a desire or misunderstanding both into yours and your partner's head.
Right.
At this point, when everything is voiced, you tell about how Satan works, how he seeks to divide you, my friends, and not about what a person wants, in fact. There is a very important point here. If one of the partners doesn't understand this process, then imagine that a thought aiming at separation comes. It doesn't matter, for example, to make a remark, and a person voices it. Meanwhile, catharsis is nothing else than the truth, that which is imposed by the demon. And here, the person...
How could you let such a thought in?
The person says, yes, consciousness, my imp, is throwing a thought to me that I should make a remark about your shoelaces. If she understands that it is consciousness which does that in order to separate, then it's clear. Hence, it picks on my shoelaces for some reason. Well, those are technical issues, we're not going to discuss them now. But she doesn't perceive it all with hostility. If she lacks understanding that this is catharsis and how important these little things are, the first thing that will follow is, watch your own shoelaces. Isn't that true?
It is.
I mean, out of spite and confrontation, or a manipulation begins, this is also a frequent and scary case. When a lot of remarks are made, when someone, one of the partners, by using spirituality and what the demon tells him as a cover, tries to create a slave for himself out of the other partner, this already suggests that the person is not going to the spiritual world. He's going to become a dominant subpersonality and he's preparing a slave for himself. This is the truth you should be aware of. Whereas catharsis is honesty, absolute honesty, but with mutual understanding.
Yes.
If, God forbid, a misunderstanding arises, the family will fall apart. Why? Because what comes to everyone's mind during the day can destroy the most close-knit family. That's true, but we hush this up. We don't voice it. Thus we keep this fragment of manipulation. Well, many will say, so how to act on the spiritual path? Just don't listen to that imp and chase it far away, that's all. Then it won't throw nonsense to you. Well, as to what you need, you see that for yourself. It's very simple, in fact. That's when you go on your own, whereas when the two of you go together, the truth plays a huge role here. So catharsis is important, and everything is important. But when you both understand, I'll emphasize once again that this is the work of consciousness, meaning it's the demon who imposes these patterns on you. So when we voice them, we weaken the demon. But he becomes more cunning, he has fewer tools left, but he will try to use them more skillfully, more precisely. This is also such a test of strength, so to say.
But you have said a very important thing, that this is normal when a person hears not only positive thoughts about his partner, that there are definitely thoughts from the system in his head, and it is always oriented at separation, and it operates in such a way that if one has heard this thought, then the system will definitely suggest something to the other partner towards separation as well. So its task is...
What's interesting here is that when there is a full catharsis, often in married couples, who have been together for a long time, one partner starts voicing, the other one picks up and continues. Why? Because thoughts come in sync. Again, they are together, let's put it this way. Their field structures or let's say, energy structure, whatever we would call it. Let's speak the language of chemistry. Their pheromones intermingle, right?
Right.
People mix together. They mix mentally. And in fact, they feel each other much stronger than it seems to us. Then we can actually understand, even from the perspective of modern physics. As soon as something comes to one partner, this is sure to be reflected in the other. This happens far and wide. For example, a person is sitting normally watching TV, not suspecting anything, but pictures are thrown into his head. He may have no reaction to them, but they have penetrated him. Meanwhile, the other partner bent down to get her slippers, thinking, where are my slippers? And here comes a thought that someone is lying there snoring, you see, with a negative bias. Or he moved my slippers somewhere, and negativity has already started. It is enough to let this small negativity slip through, as the next, larger one will come in, and everything will proceed towards division and suppression, that is, manipulation. It is exactly consciousness that causes people to manipulate each other and tells them, if you don't manipulate, you will be manipulated. Why? Because animals have nothing else. It's the same. With those very demons, they have nothing else. Someone commands and manipulates someone. Everything is simple.
So the attack is always directed at this integral unit, which a family unit is, in fact.
It's not an integral unit. It should be understood that it's not a unit.
Right.
You see?
Yes, exactly.
Yes, it's a family unit. It's people who feel good, they are calm, they have agreed, they follow the spiritual path, they understand the entire, but it's not a unit. It's two units.
Should a married couple discuss all the issues that arise? After all, during the day, so many thoughts come from consciousness, both for separation and so forth. It turns out that perhaps the only thing there is to talk about during the whole day is the thoughts.
You see, if we voice all thoughts, we will begin to pay attention to all of them, which means they will live instead of us. However, there are thoughts that slip through and become fixated. You see, I mean, those are dominant thoughts, motivating to action, or clearly fixated in the mind as a picture. Here it came, you see, and unfolded. These are the thoughts that pass through your, let's say, immunity or through your spiritual barrier. They have already come to you as personality and they are already presented to you. These thoughts that have come, even though you try to be in dynamic spiritual practices and so forth, they still pass through. So the ones that have passed through should be voiced. You see?
In other words, there is a certain power in them and they probably even possess a greater degree of intrusiveness of some kind.
And here you have noted the key point, why and what for. The system spends power. It invests this power into these thoughts which pass through your barrier and come to you as personality. You see? If you invest attention in a response, the one your consciousness wants, and start grumbling, making comments, or start ignoring and resisting, it comes, it knocks, and you resist. You invest energy. That is, when you counteract with a power equal to the impact, you invest power. While consciousness has precisely given you all this, or directed this influence precisely to receive power. In other words, it lives of it, at the expense of your attention. However, when that comes, you take it, immediately unfold and show it. All secret action stops right at that. You see, you take the power away from the system. You squeeze out that mosquito.
Great.
Yes.
It comes to you with a certain power
While you take it away.
while you take it
Right.
in such a way.
You don't give what is yours, my friends. You don't give your power, but take the power away from Satan. And this is important.
Igor Michalovič, je vhodné vykonávat duchovné praktiky spolu, když jdeme po duchovní cestě? Jestli ty praktiky dělat dohromady nebo každý zvlášť?
There is a question from Sarah whether we should do spiritual practices together or everyone independently.
Or everyone independently. Let's sort this out. For example, when you're at home, you can perform a practice while Gabriel is at work, for example. You can perform it on your own. But when you're together and he sits down to do a practice, while you, for example, are washing the dishes, it's better to sit down and do a practice together. Why is that, in your opinion?
To strengthen each other.
Not to hinder.
Not to hinder each other.
Not to hinder. Why is it better when we perform practices? When we perform practices, when you sit down, we do practices together. Why is it? Why do you think it's better? What do you mean by more powerful? Stronger when the practice is more powerful.
Well, together is more powerful. Also, together it is more peaceful. Why? I'll explain. Let's suppose Gabriel is sitting in practice while you decide to wash the floors. You're walking around rattling the bucket, distracting him, and thoughts come to him that you are doing the wrong thing. Meanwhile, you think that you are forced to wash the floors while he is supposedly sitting in a practice and napping. You see, it is consciousness that will talk about this. Whether you want it or not, demons begin to manipulate. And that's an important point. But when you have a certain schedule and you know that, let's say, at 8 p.m., you allocate half an hour for simply performing a practice together, and after the practice you discuss what the result was for each of you, how each of you did it, whether thoughts hindered and distracted you, or someone managed to get away from those thoughts in some way, so he or she shares how they did it, and you strengthen each other.
Is it really necessary, Igor Mikhailovich, after performing practices, to share what practice was like or not?
It is necessary.
It is.
It is necessary.
Right.
When you practice together,
Right.
it is also an important point. I'm just saying what results each of you has, what kind of difficulties you face, what you encounter at what stage and what distracts you, why. Always, I'll repeat once again, someone advances faster in one thing, another one advances faster in something else.
Right.
That's normal. So when you have advanced and taken step forward, you already prompt where a slippery stone is, on which you shouldn't step on. It's better to step on a harder surface.
Yes, exactly.
So as not to slip. These very moments are important. Why? Because the spiritual path involves plenty of subtleties. There are no trifles on it. And here it's extremely important to get away not only from thoughts, from the power of Satan, but even from slightest hesitations. Otherwise, nothing will work out. And it is very important that the one who is the first to receive the spiritual response helps the other person with it as well.
Yes.
Why? It's impossible not to feel it. When a spiritual surge really occurs, it fills you up.
Yes, it's impossible.
And this is important. Well, for the other person it is crucial when he or she feels that suddenly in spiritual practice, consciousness becomes active and the demon starts raging. Then first of all, especially at the first steps in spiritual development, you need to understand that if the demon suddenly rages in you, this means that the person sitting next to you, let's say, has come into contact with the spiritual world. Because your demon has started fussing. That's a good thing, and here you shouldn't be frightened. Turn this on and give attention to the demon, but on the contrary, you should focus deeper precisely on the spiritual interaction. Then it's wonderful.
Thank you.
You're welcome. There is also another important point. When one of you starts moving ahead, it doesn't matter who. For instance, you embarked on the path together. It doesn't matter. One of you can move ahead and immerse into practices more deeply and clearly, while the other one can catch up and overtake him or her. Again, what does this kind of competition depend on? On what a person was doing during the day. If a person was very much distracted, his or her practice will be weaker. If a person has less experience of really immersing at the level of feelings, practice may be weaker, while for another person it may be more powerful. But when someone moves ahead, he or she creates conditions for the person who is next to them to move forward as well. This is very important in group classes. Whereas when there are two of you, like in Christianity when Jesus said, when there are two of you, there I am with you. So in reality, the more love, the greater the effect. When love even surrounds everything, indeed, practice becomes better and purer. Therefore, by strengthening each other and helping one another, you will achieve more and faster, but you have to understand that everyone follows their own way,
Yes.
and by no means should you accuse, manipulate or push anyone. I mean, you shouldn't be in the service of Satan. If you embark on the spiritual path, then everything will work out. There will be everything, right?
Right.
And what does everything actually begin with? With love for each other.
Yes.
So friends, let's just love each other. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, friends.